invite Tian from SBS, who's going to open up the panel discussion and this event.
Thank you so much. I am noticing that the video is looking at empty seats, so I hope that any folks online can at least hear me. But good afternoon, everyone. For folks who speak Chinese, my name is Tian Weinberg, and I'm the Chief of Staff here at the Department of Small Business Services, or SBS. And it's a real pleasure to be able to kick off this amazing event tonight. At SBS, we take every chance that we can to celebrate the diversity of entrepreneurs in New York City. And so I want to start off by thanking our partners, sponsors, panelists, moderators, and everyone involved in putting together this incredible event. Especially our SBS team, thank you so much. And I'll just share a little bit about myself. I'm not a business owner, never been a business owner. I don't come from a family of business owners. I don't think I ever dreamt of being a business owner. But I'm here at the Department of Small Business Services. And sometimes I wonder if that's just me, that's just not for me. Business isn't really for me. Government might be for me. And sometimes I wonder if that's actually because I didn't know Asian women could be business owners when I was growing up. I knew we could be Olympians like Michelle Kwan. I knew we could be journalists like Connie Chung. My mom was an artist. And I grew up in the 90s, right? I'm a millennial Gen Z cusp. I'm maybe the youngest chief of staff in city government right now. It shouldn't be possible that somebody like me didn't feel like I had Asian women or men role models growing up, especially growing up in New York City. But look, that's then and this is now, and this is a room full of Asian women who are doing incredibly inspiring stuff around New York City and across the country. Like our panelists, Julie, Vic, Mai, Edwina, and so many others who are our mentors in the NYC program, who aren't just doing it for themselves. They're really doing it in a way that opens the door for so many others to come through behind them. And so that's just really impressive. We're also here in the Adams administration, a city leadership that really represents the diversity of New York City. If you didn't know, two out of the 5 deputy mayors in New York City are actually Asian women, Maria Torres Springer and Mira Joshi. My boss and my mentor, Kevin Kim, is the first Korean American commissioner of any city agency. There are actually, it sounds a little ridiculous, but there are dozens of us around the city who are leading big, impactful organizations, government organizations, at the Economic Development Corporation, at the Department of Health, Department of Buildings, making a real impact and leaving lasting change for generations to come. So from business to government to media and education, young people now are seeing something that even 20 years ago we didn't get to see. And they're seeing it because of the people here in this room and because of your participation in programs like NYC. So I just wanted to thank you for all of that. And for Lunar New Year, wishing you all good luck, good fortune, good health and wealth. And while our commissioner could not be here in person today, I did want to turn it over to some recorded remarks that he wanted to give to welcome you all here to One Liberty. So thank you so much.
My name is Kevin D. Kim, and I'm the Commissioner of the New York City Department of Small Business Services, or SBS. First, I want to thank all of our partners and sponsors who made today's event possible. Your dedication to promoting the women entrepreneurs enrolled in this program will have a profound impact on their success and ensure that their businesses and our city thrive. We are so fortunate to have a community interested in giving back, sharing knowledge, and uplifting others. New York City, as you know, has always been a place for opportunity, and many of us here share similar stories. We may have a parent or a friend or loved one who came to this country with a dream and hope for a better future. We know how incredibly hard you've worked and how they've worked to make a better life for their families. In 1975, my parents immigrated to this country with those same dreams from South Korea. We landed in a one-bedroom, one-bath in Sunnyside, Queens, and it took about 7 years before they built up their business. They worked hard, 14-hour days. My father would go knocking on doors in the garment district until people started buying the small artificial flowers my mother would design. Today, I now have the honor of being the first Korean American commissioner appointed in New York City history, thanks to their hard work. Now, I see it as my responsibility as commissioner to help hardworking entrepreneurs like my parents, like yourselves, to grow and build your business. We know that Asian American women entrepreneurs have made significant strides and wield real influence on our economy. In fact, according to the 2024 Impact of Women-Owned Business Report, there are now over 1.3 million businesses owned by Asian American women in the United States. What's more is that they employ 1.4 million people and they generate over $265 billion in revenue. Asian American female entrepreneurs are driving innovation and really bolstering our economy. But we also know the last several years have been difficult for many, with the rise of Asian American hate crimes and discrimination. Here at SBS, our staff understands the unique challenges you face and have been responsive in our programming. For example, the We NYC initiative has provided nearly 20,000 unique services to women entrepreneurs in New York City, including business education, access to funding, networking opportunities, free legal assistance, mentorship support, and many more. And thanks to Mayor Eric Adams, our city continues to set women entrepreneurs up for success. In his State of the City address, Mayor Adams announced Women Forward NYC, the historic $40 million plan on gender equity, which lays out an ambitious goal to make New York City the most women-forward city in the United States. This plan includes funding to create career pathways for women and improve financial literacy and access to financial capital. Through our commitment to women entrepreneurs and with the continued support of We NYC, we're poised to shape a future for our city where success is shared by all. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Keena Thomas. I'm the director for We NYC. Woo, woo. And we have so many great programs through We NYC. Our Commissioner Kim, he kind of just described all of our services, so I won't go into full detail. You can also look in our brochure to see all the services that we have. And if you needed this brochure in different languages, we also have it in different languages if you need. But it's so good to see you guys, and I'm so glad you're here. I worked for SBS for 13 years. I really love the work that I do here. I love serving you guys. It means so much to me. And I'm a small business owner myself, very small, so I can learn something from you guys. But thank you for coming. I'm going to, like I said, I'm not gonna go deep into the details of the services, but today you are here because our We Connect program. So this is a We Connect event. We provide mentorship services through We Connect. We have events like this, networking opportunities, and you can get a lot of great information from our mentors. We also just launched a one-on-one mentorship program. So now you can actually speak to someone for a specific skill or something like if that's similar, doing the work that you're doing, so that you could get the help that you need to grow your business. And you can go to our website, we.nyc, to look at all of the events that we have listed. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can go to our website, we.nyc, for all of the events, and please subscribe to our newsletter. We work very hard on the newsletter. But before I announce our amazing mentor that's gonna come up here in a minute, I want to just recognize some folks in the room. I wanna recognize our Assistant Commissioner, Sherry Lane. Raise your hand. She's our fearless leader. We love her so much. And also Tien, thank you so much for opening up. I loved it. It was amazing. And our commissioner, of course. And I want to thank 3x3 Priyanka. She's around here with the laptop. You see her working really hard, her and her team, Maria. And I also want to thank Tanvi. She's in the front checking people in, complimenting them on their outfits and stuff. So you guys saw our team in the front. But now, so it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today. Her name is Julie Zhu. She is really, really amazing. She is a consistent participant, a consistent, just constantly giving and serving women entrepreneur in New York City. Julie is an award-winning marketing strategist for small businesses, a contributor to Entrepreneur Magazine, and our very own We Connect mentor. So some previous works, she's been featured in Forbes. She's been featured in NASDAQ and NAWBO and over 20 publications. Julie has spoken at Columbia Business School, Soho House, JP Morgan Chase, Elevate New York, and beyond. She is a passionate advocate for women and minority representation in the business world, sorry. So please put your hands together for our amazing Julie Zhu. I also want to thank our sponsors. I'm sorry for that. Thank you for the refreshments, and also Mary Tan, our partner, our dear partner from NYWIB. I'm so sorry I didn't mention it earlier. She's back there, and it's such a pleasure to have her in the house. Yes, okay.
Yeah, and I would also encourage the MD teacher, if you're not able to hear in the back, just come up.
Hello. Can you hear me? No.
Did you guys hear her?
Hello.
You gotta get closer.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, that one's right. Yes.
Hi. And thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Kina. I really appreciate it. And I see so many familiar faces here. I'm Julie Zhu. So excited to be here with you. So today is actually the eve of the Lunar New Year. It's a very special time for me personally, and for those of us who are celebrating this holiday. I'm so ready to welcome the Year of the Dragon with you. Speaking of the dragons, do we have any dragons in the audience today? Yay, it's your year to shine. So for us entrepreneurs, the Year of the Dragon really encourages us to be bold, to be innovative, and to pursue our dreams with passion and confidence. So that's why I'm so excited. We have 3 incredible women entrepreneurs with us. We have Edwina Yeo. She's the co-founder and CEO of Supermomos. We have Vic Lee. She's the co-founder and CEO of Welcome to Chinatown. And we have Mai Truong. She's the founder of Bo&Mei. So all of them are very successful business leaders and community builders. They're going to share with us their stories, business journeys, and also the top strategy for you to start or grow your business in 2024. So let's get started. Well, I'm always curious about how people start their businesses. So So Edwina, could you tell us what inspired you to start Supermomos?
Yeah, so I first had the idea about it over COVID. When everything and everyone was going online, and I realized actually that the need for offline and human interactions were more needed than ever, and was never gonna go away. And then if you look at all the existing social media and social network platforms out there, it really helps you to connect with other people online, right? So like you might have thousands of Facebook friends, thousands of LinkedIn friends, but I felt like it still didn't make us come closer together, especially in person. And I'm a big believer of in person. I think if you share a meal with somebody, share a drink, even if you chat with someone in person for 5 minutes, you could feel much closer to them than if you were to have like multiple just online Zooms with them, right? So I think there's something about in person where I think is really magical. So like what we're doing today also. So then that's what really gave me that idea, and realizing that there wasn't any way to actually kind of meet together IRL within a group of like-minded people. And so over COVID was when we actually started, because I was pretty sure that once COVID ended, there would be a lot of pent-up energy, and it's something that I think as human beings and social creatures inherently that we really crave.
Wow, that's so inspiring. I'm a big fan of Supermomos. I really recommend you checking out her app if you're looking for any interesting events or communities to network with or making new friends. Yeah, so what about you? What inspired you to start Welcome to Chinatown?
Sure. So if you're not familiar, Welcome to Chinatown, we are a nonprofit organization supporting Chinatown small businesses and its entrepreneurs. So we started also during COVID. It was the week when everything was shutting down in New York. Saw on social media that people were encouraging to support their small businesses by buying gift cards. And I'm a Chinatown resident, and realized how many of Chinatown businesses are still cash only. So myself and my co-founder, Jennifer Tam, we started exchanging direct messages over Instagram. We're just like, what should we do? What can we do about this? How maybe we could get Chinatown businesses onto gift card platforms. So we made a one-pager, looked up how to get set up on Square, using gift cards, made that into a one-pager, and we went around to a handful of businesses, asking them oh, would you want to do this? And they were like, no. Because, for my Cantonese is pretty very basic conversational, and Jen's Cantonese is even worse than mine. So there's a language barrier, and on top of that, there was that emotional trauma and stress of what am I going to do with my business. So instead we pivoted. Actually saw on Facebook that Van Leeuwen was just giving out ice cream to essential workers. So we're like, what if we start a GoFundMe? We raise money and we purchase meals that we then donate out to essential workers. So that's how we started for Welcome to Chinatown. And myself and a couple team members, we were the ones that were picking up the orders ourselves. We were driving it, we were paying the businesses, and then we were dropping it off at hospitals. But that allowed us to build the relationships with business owners, and then from there kind of kept progressing and understanding their needs and evolved our initiatives.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Such an inspiration.
Hi everyone. So I think the impetus for me to start my business, Bo&Mei, which is still pretty brand new, the idea that I'm an entrepreneur is still new to me altogether. It's hard to, it's a brand new hat, so bear with me as I kind of am digesting in real time this whirlwind of me launching this business really just last year and finishing up the season of launching our Lunar New Year collection. But going back, I think the impetus behind starting this business was this feeling that I think a lot of parents have when they have children, which is that we want better for our children. We want our children to have what we didn't have growing up, and for me, that's a lot of things. I'm the child of Vietnamese refugees, and so growing up, we didn't have a lot. But something else I didn't have growing up was a strong connection to my Asian and Vietnamese in particular identity, my cultural roots. I grew up with a lot of shame of my identity, just from the discrimination and bias that I experienced, and so I feel like I grew up hiding from my culture quite a lot, and that I only realized that in my adulthood, and in particular when I became a parent, and recognizing that I had this deep sense of responsibility along with my husband, and he's Chinese, and we both, upon becoming parents, felt this deep sense of responsibility to give our children a strong connection to their cultural roots. But we realized, wow, we actually don't really know how. Both of us, having grown up in Asian diasporas, felt kind of this weakened connection to our cultural identity, and so when it came to this responsibility now that we had to share our cultural roots with our children who were going to grow up Asian and Asian American, that we felt like we didn't have the tools really to do so. You know, we have a bit of the language across Vietnamese and across Cantonese as well. We have the food, but when it came to the traditions and the customs, these were aspects of my upbringing that I took for granted, and you know, I at times hid from. And so now, as an adult, I realized I just didn't have the know-how and the fluency to share these traditions and customs with my children. So, speaking to other friends of mine who grew up in Asian diasporas, or perhaps parents as well, and wanting the same for their children, we realized that this was a common challenge that many of us in this generation face, of wanting to connect to our culture, but not quite knowing how to do so. So fast forward, I mean, that was, you know, it started with becoming a parent for the first time, and these big questions, these meta questions of what is culture and how do we cultivate culture in our children. And it took some intentional steps of trying to do that in an everyday way with cultivating language and food. But when it came to customs and traditions like Lunar New Year, I realized a couple years ago when I was trying to really make this holiday really special for my children, that I just was scrambling to understand all the different details and the rich history and the symbolism behind every aspect of this amazing tradition. I found it challenging to find all the right things, to understand all of the details that I didn't absorb as I was growing up. So fast forward, and I thought, why not make it a little bit easier for folks like me who want to connect to these traditions but don't quite know how. I thought a lot about people who are across the country and who don't have access to the amazing Chinatown that we have, and the ability to tap into the wonderful resources for celebrating these traditions that Chinatown has to offer. There are so many people who live in parts of the country that don't have access to those resources, and so I was thinking of them in how I can make celebrating culture more accessible. And then I also wanted to make it more inclusive in our family. We're a Chinese and Vietnamese family, and I was having trouble finding aspects of the Vietnamese tradition when it comes to celebrating Lunar New Year, and so I wanted to make a more inclusive concept that really embraced both the Chinese and Vietnamese traditions when it came to Lunar New Year. Broadly, our mission is to strengthen connection to culture, make celebrating traditions more inclusive, foster cultural appreciation, and ultimately, I think the big picture idea is that we want to create a world where everyone feels proud of who they are and they feel like they belong.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I feel like a lot of our audience could really relate to what you said. So thank you for sharing. So I wonder, running your own business can be a roller coaster. I remember in the first year of my business, I would Google everything from how do I do my taxes to how do I write an email that people actually want to open. So every day is like a new lesson for me. I wonder, I'm curious to hear about your experience. What has surprised you the most about entrepreneurship? Is this all rainbows and sunshines?
Yeah, so I still like Google a lot of stuff. Yeah, but I would say I think the first thing that I was really surprised by. So maybe quick background. I used to be a management consultant at a big management consultancy. So, and then after that went on to private equity. So I spent most of my career basically doing lots of research and advising people on things, but I had never actually operated a day in my life. And so when I first started built my first iteration of product, I think the first surprise that I got was that your users lie to you all the time. And I don't mean that in any malicious way, but in the sense that I think human beings generally, we don't know what we want, right? And this is why people also change jobs, change relationships. We're always experimenting with ourselves. And so the first user group that I had, I did a lot of research. I asked them what do you want in this product? What will make you get to use it? And then I launched it, and then I tracked it, and I realized that some of the most active, loudest voices, they didn't even log in to the web, to the app and website for a whole month. And I was like, but I thought they loved it, so I was pretty upset initially. And so that was my first root shock that hey, actually, I think I think for a startup, I think do less research and do more iterating. So you just have some strong hypotheses, and then just launch and test. And then what the users actually do with the product, or what they don't do, which is equally telling. If they're not even there, then that is where you have to work with them, right? The data that you're collecting on what people are actually doing rather than saying. So that was the first root shock. And then I guess after that also, it was then getting rejected by a lot of salespeople. So I think the other thing is that what I realized is making money is much harder than I thought. So yeah, so when I first started, for the first year, I was it's okay, I'm just gonna burn money like a normal startup, and think about growth, and I won't think about money yet. And then when I started to monetize, it took me a whole year to even kind of get my first business model working. Right, and so yeah, that was the other thing. I think getting used to rejection, because initially people would basically for an early startup where you don't have a brand name at all in the market, you can be ignored into existence. I mean ignored into inexistence, right? Literally. So I think it's just always widening the funnel, trying to get to more widening the funnel as much as possible. And then I think a lot of it is also around developing trust with people. So over time, I remember I had one, currently a client, but we had been talking to them for more than a year. And initially they told me that hey, we don't really work with small startups. We work more with established players in the market. And after I had the first convo, I was pretty upset for a day. But then now, because over time we've still done a lot of events, we've invited them to them, and after a year, they are not only working with us, but they're actually inviting other of their partners to be our clients as well, right? So then I think that trust over time, I think is also something that is really important. I think if you keep focusing on do a great product at a good price point, and just keep pleasing the customer, then I think that comes over time as well. But the rejection was something that I maybe didn't expect to hit as hard when it first came in droves, and it still comes today. But I guess a bit less so.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think also working in the media, I feel getting rejection is kind of a daily life, a daily practice. But I also feel it's kind of a numbers game. So yeah, trying to take it less personally. Yeah, would you like to share a little bit?
Sure. So I thought two things. First is, so we opened a physical space in July. It's our small business innovation hub, so it's on 115 Bowery. We opened it without fully fundraising for the construction. The vision that we had was we would have launched this capital campaign, we would have been fully funded, and we would have opened the hub in this vision that we wanted for, and that we also felt Chinatown and the community deserved to have. But it didn't happen that way. So I think what is really surprised me was how much I can't stick to a certain timeline. There just has to be a plan A, B, C, and D, and that there are so many unintended consequences of of what sometimes you think that you're going to do this, but you do this, and then there's this unintended consequence that you now have to solve for. So I felt like having to be like nimble and agile, and there's a certain part of me, like early in my career, I was an event planner. So, you know, you're supposed to move at this timeline, and to not feel like it was complete failure when I didn't achieve that funding, or like, you know, we were positioned where now that even though we achieved the funding to be able to start construction in the space, we still have to be able to go out there for like financing, and like that set the timeline even back more, or like contractor bids come in way higher than the first initial quote. So I think it's like giving, I felt like for the first time in a lot in my career is like giving a lot more grace, because I've been in this like corporate world, and often there's a lot of protections, right, that you have in the corporate world. So that has been surprising, and I think the other surprising thing is like oddly trash removal as a small business owner is like incredibly difficult. So like I give kudos to anyone, especially if you're in the restaurant world. Like our team was like, why is it so hard to like just take out trash and figure out the days, and yeah, so those are the two things.
I resonate with a lot of that. I feel like every day there's a surprise, so I can't name them all. But I also relate to the what I've now reframed as the need to reframe success or redefine success, right? We have a picture in our head of how things are going to turn out, and it never turns out the way that you think it will, and learning to be okay with that is something that I'm continually doing. I think a big surprise for me that is a positive thing is that there are so many resources out there. I'm assuming now than ever before, because this is my first time starting my own business. I've daydreamed about starting a business for years now, and I always thought it was just so daunting that it would be insurmountable. There are too many obstacles in my way, and the logistics, and so many variables to figure out. And when I set my mind to do this particular thing, and just thought, I have to brace myself for all these obstacles, and it's going to take a really long time, and just going to bear through it. And as I chipped away at each piece, I found that there are these amazing resources to support, and that made it a little bit easier. It's still really hard. This is by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But it's actually surprisingly easier than I thought it was going to be, with a caveat that it's still really hard. So an example is, I will shout out to SCORE and Mary back there, who was introduced earlier, who is my SCORE mentor. When I learned that the U.S. Small Business Administration offers free business mentoring services, I signed myself right up. It was like, that was one easy area. One variable that I didn't know existed that did make things a little bit easier. Having a person to help me conceptualize is just good to turn to for expertise and for guidance in starting this. That opened up doors to meeting Julie here, who's been a wealth of support and guidance and advice, and even direct support in helping me launch the past couple of months. So just kind of scratching the surface and realizing that there are just these endless resources now, learning about We and NYC a little bit more, and I'm really excited to dig into the resources there. There's also a broader ecosystem that I was surprised by, and that is supporting, that allows for small businesses to flourish. And I imagine just kind of the age of tech over the past 10 years plus, coupled with COVID, and how those dynamics really accelerated pathways for small e-commerce businesses like myself. I found that Shopify, for example, made it really easy to set up a website and a platform for e-commerce. I thought that setting up my own website was going to be really challenging, really expensive, having to design something and then learning all the nuts and bolts of having, taking sales, and that was surprisingly easy. So anyway, my takeaway is that it was, it seems like easier than ever before, even though it is still really challenging. If you just look around you and products and make use of the amazing resources and this ecosystem that has propped up to support small businesses. That's been a really pleasant surprise.
Wow, that's such a nice surprise to have. So next I have $1 million question. I'm always curious about this one. I'm sure a lot of audience are gonna be curious about this one too. So when you were starting out, how did you manage to attract your first 100 users or members or customers? I wonder what is the one strategy that really made a difference for you? Who would like to take this one?
So for us, when we were starting out, I guess because curated communities, right, is like the main focus. So the first one was you need to get sufficient users, and then the second is to make sure that it's a curated group of users. So the first one was to identify firstly, like, okay, where are all, like, I grew up in the tech ecosystem, so I wanted to do like the tech ecosystem first, right? So a group of tech professionals. So where do all these like tech professionals reside, both online and offline, right? And then that's how I could go. So like initially, I would, online-wise, I would put my own events on meetup.com even, you know, like you get from Meetup and Reddit. You know, Reddit also sometimes has like a community that meets up in person. So I would go to these online forums and try to get like users offline. Additionally, offline, I was working at a WeWork, actually the one on Irving Street. So I would go and like buy like boxes of insomnia cookies, and I would spend like days, like literally from 9 a.m. to like 7 p.m. when people were around, go door to door and be like, hey, how are you? Can I come in? Can I share about my startup? And I'll give you a cookie if you download the app. So literally I would be, you know, going door to door, and that was like, you know, my first like 50 to 100 users. It's all like WeWork Irving Place, specifically all the startups that were there. And then I also, of course, asked my friends of friends, my you know, Penn alumni, classmates to come on board. So initially seeded it really with like all these different communities. And then for the first 6 months after we came to New York, I also put up like a code, so meaning you couldn't just download Supermomos on the app, or you couldn't access it on the website unless you had a code. So it was all like blocked, and you would need that code to join. So initially it was also like being very, because back then we didn't have curation features that let you, or let hosts curate, you know, who to let in to an event at that point yet. So then we just blocked the whole thing upfront also for the first 6 months. So I think like for us it was ensuring that we had like a sufficient mass, you know, at a go, because if you go on the platform and there's no one, then you're like, oh, okay, so boring, let me leave, right? And then ensuring it's also the right kind of people that you're initially targeting, and so we were very strict with the curation also.
Wow, thank you for sharing. I like how creative and strategic and resourceful you are. Yeah, so.
So for a little, I guess, different for us, because we're, so as nonprofits, more for donations. But I think a lot of what Edwina said about, especially earlier, just essentially not waiting for perfection and like being able to like put an idea and like test that out there. A lot for Welcome Chinatown, we started just by messaging each other, whether on social media, or there were a lot of employee resource groups that we were tapping into in our corporate networks, and just saying, we're thinking about doing this for the community. Who would like to like try and get involved and be able to like share feedback on that? And you never know who turns up there. Like how I think we really got a lot of the support and donations was a acquaintance of mine, a work acquaintance, saw what we were doing, was like, oh, I actually have one of my friends is a journalist, and you know, she's very like much plugged into the food scene. And you know, Chinatown resonates a lot for its like food and beverage in the industry. It's like, why don't I connect you two and see if she's willing to write a story? And like that's how we got published on Grub Street. That being said about not waiting for perfection, I do think that this might sound like just kind of sound like it's in opposition with each other, but I do think that it is important not waiting for perfection on ideas, but that when you do have an idea, you should have really good branding. Because when we got published on Grub Street, it was right before like our current head of creative, his name is Harry Trin, and he had saw what we were doing on the employee resource group, that Slack channel that I said, For Welcome to Chinatown, we didn't have like a logo or anything. The webpage was just, I took my co-founder Jen, her engagement photo that she took in Chinatown. It was this beautiful like black and white photo on Mott Street. And I put a burgundy box, because I was like, oh, maybe it's like a darker version, like red, you know? So it's like, we'll put this burgundy box on her and her husband, and just put Welcome to Chinatown. And on that Slack channel, Harry's like, I love your idea. Here's my branding portfolio. I think you could use some help. And like created this like whole logo, like colors, and just gave us a brand identity so that when the Grub Street piece was published, people were like, oh, this is polished, and I get it. There was like a visual identity that was tied to this idea. So, you know, don't wait for perfection on getting feedback about the ideas, but when you have that idea, like it's so important to invest in branding so that there's distinction.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll piggyback off of that. I think the branding piece, I mean, again, being brand new to starting a business, I was just winging every piece of it, but I knew early on that I wanted what I was building to be driven by my story, because I wanted the opportunity to connect with other people who might feel similarly, and that was a big driver for me, because I think ultimately, you know, having my lived experience and hearing from others that they shared similar experiences, it made me feel less alone, right? And so it made me want to build something that can connect with other people, and so I went out strong in trying to tell the story and building the brand around the story. It was challenging because I'm kind of naturally an introvert, and so putting myself out there and my story in that vulnerable way was quite scary to me, but it offered this opportunity to connect with other people who relate and resonate with the story. And so, yeah, I would echo the branding piece. On the how I built the first 100 customers, I guess, I'm still digesting. I really just packed my last Lunar New Year kit box right before heading over here, and so I haven't quite, quite digested what everything looks like. But early on, I launched in October because I wanted to kind of get an early sense of what the demand might be, put myself out there. It was a kind of part of the business plan as well to get some early revenue in the form of pre-order sales to give myself some of the cash flow needed to invest in inventory to have in time for Lunar New Year. So that was a kind of, I think, probably a risky strategy, but it ended up working out mainly, I think, because of the power of network effects. I really tapped my personal network and shared the story among friends and family, and I was nervous to do so because again, being introverted, it's really hard to put myself out there, and even asking for help, it can be really challenging for me. But I was so encouraged and heartwarmed to find how many people wanted to support, and they shared it widely with their networks and shared it among their friend groups and their coworkers, and that helped build early momentum for me back in October with a pre-order campaign that was I think pretty successful, that enabled me to have something to work with when we had the bigger sales campaign this past month. So yeah, the power of community and networks, I think that's, I mean, it sounds really similar to both of your journeys. It's just kind of going out there and being resourceful and connecting with people.
Wow, I love it. So I think if any of you are looking to start or grow your business this year, maybe the first thing you do is to start sharing it with everyone you know, and you're going to be surprised how many people are going to be able to collaborate with you, or maybe be partner, or help you along the way. Thank you for sharing. So my next question is, well, balancing work and life can be really challenging for entrepreneurs because the work never really stops. And especially it's really tricky when you have other commitments like a family or a job or personal relationships. So I wonder if how do you manage or balance those multiple commitments?
Okay, so I guess it'll be good because we all have like different life stages. So for me, I guess maybe first I don't have a family or dependents yet, but I'm recently engaged. So thank you. But I think the first thing is that I would say I'm still figuring it out, and I think it's really tough. And I feel like the best that I could be doing now is more like work-life harmony, where I still think about work all the time, even during weekends, even when I'm sleeping and in my shower. But I think maybe what helps with that harmonization is that I love what I do. So I think, like I was lucky to be, to have found a sector where I'm super passionate about it, and I love thinking about like, how people interact, how to bring communities together. So it doesn't feel like work all the time, even if I am thinking about it all the time. Whereas if, let's say, I was working on like working capital, like I think on Saturday, if I had to think about it, I'll be like, oh man, again. So, yeah, I guess that's one thing. The other thing also is, I used to do like this like Excel spreadsheet of how I spend my time. So literally I would take like an example calendar week, and I would like document, every half an hour, like exactly what am I doing. I'll just look back at like the calendar, right? And then categorize them. So, okay, this is a time that you spend on work, in meetings, on friends, on family, on dates, on, like any big category of your life. And then you have to think like from first principles also, like, okay, how do I want to spend my life, like in terms of like sleep, because it's a harsh trade-off. We all only have 24 hours. So if you spend more time sleeping, you have less time for other things, but then your health is compromised, right? So you just have to pick between, some of the top areas. So again, I think depending on your life stage also is like a different like priorities of those different buckets, but I think it's a very worthwhile exercise to do. So when I did that, then I would map out like, okay, how am I actually spending my time? And then I realized, for example, that like, I think especially the first 2 years of a startup, that unfortunately it is, like one of the things that I would be trading off could be, for example, like friends, right? Like now a lot of my friends, I just tell them like, hey, come to Supermomos events. But then I have a rule for myself where, during the weekdays, for the most part, like, again, sometimes there are exceptions, but I don't usually like meet friends on the weekdays. I would try to meet them on the weekends. And so weekdays is all like work or work related. So it could be like client meetings or partner meetings, but unless it's like to do with work, I usually will say, hey, I'm so sorry, but like I'm super small, I can't do it. So then, but there's downsides that come with that, because then, recently I saw like some of my friends gathering on social media, and I was like, oh, I didn't even get invited to that. But then I have been rejecting their invites, right? Like throughout, so you can't expect everyone to keep inviting you to something if you keep not showing up. So, even that requires investment. But then again, if you think about what are your priorities, and it's a very harsh reality, right? So you just make that trade-off. So I don't think it's a balance necessarily, but I don't know, I guess like you just do what the best you can do is, and knowing that there are costs to everything that you do or not do.
Exactly, to know what really matters to you, we have to really able to prioritize those things.
Yeah, I would echo what Edwina said, and I think for like my experience of figuring out like how I could prioritize, I actually didn't join Welcome to Chinatown full time until this past November. I still was working at my corporate full-time job because I made that decision because I thought, what does the organization need? It needs operations, it needs to be able to execute. So I felt that it was better to invest the full-time salaries for Welcome to Chinatown on hiring staff, like our current COO, that she was actually our first hire. Because I felt that the strategic side I could do in the evenings. Like I could do my day job, and then figure out on the strategic side, be able to compromise, do that towards like late afternoon into the evenings. But it got to this point where it was like, cutting out a lot of my like social life. I was getting extremely, extremely burnt out, and then it was also taking a toll in terms of like, especially my health. Like last year, I maybe went to the gym like once every 2 months, which was, really could like feel that on both like mental health and then like physically. So figured that like really stepping back in like how to prioritize, and I have always felt in like a management style, it's like lead by example, and I couldn't tell like my team members like, oh, you should be taking care of yourself if I wasn't like taking care of myself. So I use like the holiday break to essentially like reconfigure my schedule, and I've like now blocked out my calendar where the mornings are like non-negotiable. Like I'm not a morning person. I'm trying to get myself to be a morning person. I don't know if I'll ever get there. Like, but what I've been able to do is like, all right, my workday starts at 10 a.m. because I can wake up at 7 and go to the gym. So it's non-negotiable there. And then on my relationship side, like I'm not married and I don't have kids, but I have a partner who want to actively like being able to like work on that relationship. So we've discussed like Friday evenings, like 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Like there's no compromise there. Like those are the times that it's like just for us. So I think being a lot more regimented and disciplined, and there's times where I feel guilty telling myself like, no, I do kind of want to do this, but it's like, well, zooming out, this was the prioritization I had set for myself, and like, you know, in 6 months, like I'll look at this again, but for now, it like seems like it's working.
Yeah, this is a challenge that I feel deeply right now, and I really resonate and admire the different strategies that both of you are sharing, and when it comes to carving out boundaries and prioritizing yourselves, and just making sure that you're constantly reflecting on what's working and what's not. That would be my takeaway as well. I can't say that I'm succeeding at it, but it's an effort. You know, I do have a family and 2 kids, and that's been the biggest challenge for me, because juggling, you know, the various priorities. It's been that's been the biggest trade-off. I think I had a couple Sundays ago, I spent, or weekends, it was the full weekend I spent at this little warehouse space that I have rented that's just a couple miles from our home in Brooklyn, but I was there both Saturday day and Sunday day, and at some point my 5-year-old calls me and she's so upset, and she just misses me so much because I haven't been around, and it broke my heart because that was the real trade-off, right? I was pursuing something I really love, but I was so lonely doing it because I was by myself in this warehouse, and I have my family at home who I missed and who missed me, and so it really captured kind of this trade-off that I have. But something that I try to use to guide me when it comes to how I prioritize is reflecting on my values. I started thinking a lot about my personal values the past couple of years, and using that to just help guide any decision that I have to make in life, and knowing that family is one of my absolute core values, and seeing my daughter just so devastated that I wasn't around for yet another day, and seeing how that was in conflict with that personal value of prioritizing my family. You know, one way I made up for it was I set her up on a little tripod that I had, and she just was there with me in the warehouse on the phone, on FaceTime, and got to watch me pack boxes, and I got to chat with her and show her through what I was doing, and she was there with me in a way, and so that was one way that I realized, like, you know, there is a trade-off there, like I'm gonna be less efficient. I needed to maybe keep up the pace that I had in mind for that afternoon, but at that moment it was more important for me to be present in the way that I could be with her. And so I guess my takeaway is maybe reflecting on your core values and using that as a guidepost for making decisions and how you prioritize your decisions in life, and how you prioritize the way that you balance all of our different life's goals and life's priorities.
Actually, Mai, do you think you could have brought her into the warehouse and got her to pack for you?
I thought about that. Yeah, it would probably be less effective. But now that we're on the other side of getting these boxes out into the world, I'm going to go into her class on Monday to celebrate the Lunar New Year with her class, and so she's going to come with me on Sunday, and she's going to help me pack those boxes for her friends, so she's really excited about that.
Oh, that's so sweet. I wonder how did each of your cultural identity influence your entrepreneurial journey? I know some of you already mentioned that you got so inspired by Chinatown, by your cultural heritage. So what does it mean for you to be an Asian American woman entrepreneur?
So okay, I guess firstly I'm Asian Singaporean. So I'm Singaporean by nationality, but then yeah, I guess moved here about 2.5 about 2+ years ago. I would say I think maybe I'm more conservative, I think, than the average founder. I think both because I'm Asian and also female, maybe because you know females are also more conservative as a gender class in general, and then Asians also. So like I guess initially, you know, my mom was, especially in our first year when we were burning money, she's like, are you running a non-profit? Like, why are you like doing things for people for free? Like, this is not a business. So, you know, like typical Asian parents, my mom especially would be like hounding me about like monetizing and telling me about my non-profit that I'm building, but it wasn't a non-profit. So I think that's one, and also I guess as a part of that, I think it's also changed how I have you know, decided to be more self-reliant. So for me, even though eventually I might still want to be venture backed, we did raise an angel round of funding as well. So in, I guess to the extent where it can help us to really scale across like different cities faster, I want to make sure that when we do go into the market, that it's done from a place of strength, not because I really need your money and you have to put your money in. If not, like I'll shut down and I can't survive. So for me, it's like, okay, we have to be break even, and then when we do fundraise, it's because like we have great unit economics and I don't need to like beg for money. So I think that's the other thing, like I really don't like to beg and don't like to sell. The other thing also maybe about like me not liking to sell, I'm not sure if that's maybe a cultural thing or not, but like yeah, I don't really like to like convince people to you know like give me any money. So I think and me as an Asian also, I love a great bargain and a great deal. So in Singapore, like, you know, getting a good deal is like very well known within like the Singaporean culture, is like what we live for. So for me also, when like the way I approach selling now, also because like I hate it, is that I have to really believe that my product at that price point is probably the best that I think my clients and my partners can get in the market. And then for my community, you know, when they attend events, it's free, they get free food, they get free drinks, they get free friends. So for them, they're also like, wow, like it's all free. And then for the clients and the partners we work with, had they put the money into a venue, like they would probably pay the venue the same as they would pay us. But because we're so efficient, because we have so many venue partners, you know, we can do all of these at similar price points, but we can still make a profit, right, to sustain us. So I think the other thing also, and I also tell like, you know, my team, is that like the day we feel like we cannot hand on heart sell our product and feel like it's a really good deal is the day that, you know, we should pause selling and then reflect internally on the product, on the price point, on the value proposition before we, you know, continue. So I think like that focus on a good deal for everybody that we touch and that we work with, I think, I don't know again how Asian necessarily that is, but I think like maybe that mindset, you know, has probably like featured in it. In, yeah, so both me being more conservative and like, you know, focus on this like great deals.
Yeah, I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people here.
So for our organization, we have like 3 core values. The first is that we honor the culture and community of Chinatown. The second is that we listen before we deliver, and then the third is that we're partners, we're not saviors. And those values, both Jen and I, we're daughters of Chinese immigrants. And I feel like that has, we've really been like, one of our biggest superpowers has been for Jen and I think we both have really high EQ. Like we can read a room without having to say anything. We are like extremely observant. I mean, there were a lot of times too where like, you know, sitting around like the dinner table, like my family, we didn't like deep dive into like feelings or anything, but you can like read the emotions on their face. You can read the body language. You can tell when something was wrong or when something was really going really well in the family. So I think that taking those like lessons and upbringings of like growing up in a immigrant household and like watching my parents kind of trying to struggle between like what's, you know, being like, how do you adapt to being American, but then like trying to find those moments where like you're leaning into your culture and heritage. I feel like that has really given us a lot of empathy in how we operate. The you know, other side of that is like I feel like I really struggle if like you put me in a room and say like, oh, like go talk about, you know, your big accomplishment, because it's like I was brought up to be like really humble about things and not to necessarily like be the one to be the loudest voice in the room or like take up space. So I think that overcoming those challenges means being able to like make sure that you can get out of your comfort zone, and it's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable. But that also brings us back to another element. I think that what Edwina said of like being resilient, like Asian women are incredibly resilient, and like the matriarchs, and like don't have to necessarily be the loudest voice in the room, but you can see from their accomplishments and be really proud and like carry themselves extremely well.
Yeah, I relate to those struggles, self-promotion and selling and putting myself out there, big challenges that I do think have maybe a component or association from my cultural upbringing. One other thought that comes to mind is from Tian's opening remarks about not seeing Asian women entrepreneurs as around us as to be role models, and that was very much my experience. And I think from it's the immigrant experience, not necessarily related to the Asian cultural experience, but the Asian immigrant experience, where I think a lot of Asian immigrants came to the U.S. or other diaspora communities and had to start over, and a lot of that my parents' generation were small business owners. My parents owned and ran a small auto body shop, and I think that experience, and they did find, they provided for us and gave us opportunities, and I'm deeply grateful for that. But I know that they never wanted that for us, for me and my siblings. That experience of having a small business, I think that's what leads to the generalization that a lot of Asian parents, particularly of the immigrant generation, want their children to go into the professional class, be the doctors and lawyers and engineers, and have these pathways that are much more stable and proven for success, as opposed to the backbreaking, gritty work of starting your own business. So I think I've been presented with that obstacle of not having those role models of women entrepreneurs who are doing work that they're passionate about. My parents, and I think parents of the Asian immigrant background, did it out of necessity. And so that's kind of what keeps me inspired as well, is to kind of be a part of these growing ranks of really inspiring Asian women who are following their passions and putting themselves out there despite parents telling us not to, and showing our parents that actually we can do this work, and we can take the lessons we've learned from them and the resilience that they've helped us cultivate, and the values that they've cultivated in us, that can lead to really rewarding work in this space, that will also not lead to the concerns that they have that this is